I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts. Welcome to our webinar on effective strategic planning. Every ministry design process has 4 phases. The discovery phase, where you identify your core values, define your mission, and discover your vision, God's vision for your ministry. We move from the discovery phase into the strategic planning phase, but help you to understand that if you haven't properly identified your core values that is driving your ministry and defined very clearly your mission, and then discerned and developed a vision, God's vision for your ministry, your strategic plan is setting on a faulty foundation if you haven't done the first 3 steps correctly. Because proper preparation, planning, and processes prevent poor performance. So if we want to do this correctly, we're going to follow these first 3 steps in order to properly prepare and plan. The design phase is where we talk about and we design the strategic plan that is based on our values, mission, and vision. I want to give to you 5 principles that make for an effective strategic plan. Every church that I have observed that is effective has a game plan. They may have used different processes. They may have come to their conclusions using different models, but they all have a plan and they're working that plan. Other consultants who have been at this much longer than myself have said probably the number one downfall of churches today to effectively make disciples is that they have a plan but are not implementing it. So at the outset here, as we discuss this, we want to use our strategic plan more than just paper to fill a notebook. We want to use it and implement it in order to carry out God's plan for our congregation, for our ministry. The greatest value of strategic planning is not the document, though it is important, but the process that the church works through to establish the plan. Strategic planning is a journey. The vision God gives you becomes your church's future destination. And speaking of destination, let's use the metaphor of a ship going from one port to a port of call. And as we talk about this, we'll look at the different principles that are a part of every strategic planning model that you might use. Number 1, it's on the screen in front of you, is that an effective strategic plan is directive, not restrictive. Does the captain of the ship that we're talking about really expect to sail the exact course he has charted? Well, probably not. The ocean, the sea is not that accommodating. He knows there will be unexpected events on the voyage. He realizes he'll have to adapt and adjust. The destination is still the same, but the plans are adjusted as needed. Haven't you ever taken a trip with your family on vacation or traveling one place to another, had road work or an accident that happened, punched in your GPS on your phone or on your dash in order to get an alternate route and pulled off the road and gone around the accident or around the road work? That's what a captain does. It's directive. The direction does not change. The destination does not change. But you may find that you need to adapt and adjust. So the destination stays the same, but the plans are adjusted as needed. The navigator will keep one eye on the plans and the other eye on the changing environment. Because we live in such a day that change is such a daily part of our lives and makes something that was very common yesterday in our ministry and business life, our family life, now obsolete, and we've got a new item or a new technology that is being used. So planning is simply a technique for establishing and maintaining a sense of direction so that you can work consistently to make progress in that chosen direction. you're going to lay out a strategic plan based on the information you have at hand today. Factors that will arise tomorrow and in the coming months and years will impact the plan that you lay out today. You don't know yet what those changes are going to be. As you gain new understanding and information, and as the changes are taking place around you, your particular plan will have to be adjusted and adapted to meet your new environment. An unexpected event occurring can impact your congregation, and you'll need to seek God's leadership to figure out how to adjust the plan to meet the challenges. If you meet your goals that you've set up in your strategic plan earlier than you thought you would, the goals will need to be adjusted. If you are in mid-course and you discover the goals you have set are not attainable, you may need to adapt the goals. So here's the rule. Strategic plans are flexible. They're directive, but not restrictive. In other words, some guys would have a plan set up and then force everyone to stay on course using the same plan in the same way, regardless of the effectiveness of the plan. So realize that no matter how you go about strategically planning to reach the vision that God has for your ministry so that you're carrying out your mission, that you're going to have to stay flexible, ready to be a spiritual marine to adapt and adjust to your environment. The parts of your strategic plan that are not going to change are your vision and your values and your mission, the very foundation upon which you are forming your strategic plan. But your action plans and your goals and objectives, they may be adjusted as needed. The navigator, the captain, and his team do not leave the charts, the electronic gear, and their compass on the coastline in town. They don't leave it from their former location where they started from. They carry all that with them and make adjustments as they see fit to stay on course, and they evaluate their progress. As with any effective plan, the navigational plan gives directions, but it is not restrictive. You have to remain flexible. Principle number 2, there is continual process. An effective strategic plan is a continuous process by which a ministry is to be kept on course. Once the ship's captain and the navigator establish the course to take, they do not abandon the plans. They continuously use the plans to measure progress. Mile markers. Mile markers. They do. I know that doesn't go with the metaphor of the sea captain, but I don't know how to tell you with the sea captain. They do not simply leave the plans on the shelf, but they tweak and adjust and adapt them as their environment changes. This will be necessary to keep the ship on course toward its destination, the vision. When unforeseen crises and opportunities present themselves, the captain and his leadership team enter into a dialogue. They discuss the options to optimize their resources in light of the new information, in light of the new environment or the changes that they are facing. The greatest mistake we can make in strategic planning is to go through all the initial work of planning and feel like when you've done that, you've finished. If we were to go across the country and look at churches that had gone through the process of a ministry design and strategically planned their action steps, their strategy in order to make disciples, we would find church after church that have a notebook with their strategic plan in it, but they are not implementing the plan. If the plan that you are going to do is going to have an eternal impact, the process is not finished, complete, when it is presented for approval by the congregation or whoever does the approval, your elder board or your deacons. It's never finished. Back to principle number 1. You have to remain flexible. Principle number 2 is all the way through the implementation of this strategic plan, you have to realize it is a continual process. An effective strategic plan is more process than an event, a task. Strategic planning is never going to be done. It's a never-ending process. You constantly look at the charts as you encounter unforeseen crises and opportunities so that you can make adjustments as needed, as necessary. Strategic planning requires continuous dialogue among church leaders from top to bottom and side to side. The pastor and his church leaders will constantly be checking back against the initial set of plans to determine how well things are going. What I'm giving you at the moment is down further in the ministry design process where you have implemented your plan, and now you are monitoring and measuring and managing your plan as it is being carried out. The leadership team should review action plans and goals at least monthly, if not weekly. So if you have a leadership team or paid staff or combination of volunteer and paid staff, some part of your strategic plan should include regular meetings to review with all your key ministry directors and leaders how the plan is performing. Measure what you want to be successful. You measure it. You reward it. You celebrate it. But you certainly monitor and measure it. An effective strategic plan is a living dynamo. It's dynamic. It's not static. It doesn't stand still. Because the world is in a continual state of flux, no strategic plan established today or tomorrow can take into account all the variables that the future will bring to your doorstep. Planning is not an attempt to predict the future, but planning is necessary because it gives us the best chance for survival in a world that is constantly changing. So it's a continual process. You don't just plan it and you're done. You implement it, you monitor and manage it by adapting and adjusting the plan as you measure it to make certain that it's going to do what God wants it to do. God's divine design for your ministry goes beyond identifying your core values, defining his mission for you, discovering his vision for your ministry, and making a game plan. It involves implementation, execution, monitoring and measuring, and making adjustments until you have followed your mission and carried it out as God wishes until you fulfill his vision for your ministry. Principle number 3 involves many players. An effective strategic plan involves those who must execute the plans. I wrote a blog post on the components of engaging people in ministry, volunteers, engaging them in ministry. And one of my newsletter readers responded to me that they had an experience where their church, and it was a large church, was top down and there wasn't discussion to apply certain principles to everyone. In other words, everything was top down, just from an edict or a command from the top down, and it didn't work. So one of the key principles, if you're going to have an effective strategic plan that is implemented, executed, monitored, measured, and adjustments and adaptation made so that it is successful, means that you have to involve many people in this. The captain, the navigator, and the crew are all a part of the ministry team for your strategic planning. Each team member is to understand their role and the importance of their particular assignment for your church, for your ship, to reach its destination. Each member of the crew must understand their role and do their job. And it means that you need feedback from the very people who are hands-on doing the work. So head, heart, hands, and feet. Every part of the body, 1 Corinthians 12 through 14, is working together to partner with God, and it means every person, every part, each one of those in your paid personnel and in your volunteer workforce and leadership are to be actively involved in the strategic planning at some point. They are to be engaged so that your plan is more full, complete, successful, so that it will be effective. For any strategic plan to work, the entire process needs to be led, probably by that senior pastor. He's the captain of the ship. That does not mean that you have to make every decision or attend every single planning meeting, or that you have to interview every player that's involved in it or meet with them individually. But it does mean that it requires leadership for this to happen. If you're not enthusiastic about the process of strategic planning, then it's likely going to die on the vine. It's likely going to sink out in the ocean, following our metaphor. It's going to end up at the wrong port, or it's just going to be cast with no wind in your sails, and your ship's not going to go anywhere. You're going to sail in circles. So in doing this, understand that you have to involve lots of people. So, Pastor, you've got to guide the process. You've got to initiate the process, buy into it completely, or it will fail. You've got to breathe it, talk it, preach it, write it, lead it on an ongoing basis. You've got to champion the process of strategic planning. You've got to help them carry out your mission in order to reach your vision, and it's going to require that you as the leader. But along with that, you may find that you need a navigator either inside your church or from outside your church family to come alongside you as the captain to help you as a guide and translator to navigate your way to your port of call, to your destination, to your vision. And then your crew, from the ministry directors who are over different parts and systems and processes in your ministry to the very person who's just perhaps filling that cup with coffee and handing it to a visitor who's come onto your campus for the first time, or a parking lot attendant, that you want to involve them. It involves many players. I warned you that top-down strategic planning is rarely, if ever, effective. And so you want to, at the same time while you provide leadership, involve everyone else. And you've got to figure out what that's going to look like for your ministry. But you need feedback, and the parts of your church family that you might not normally think would be a part of your planning, that you need their input. You need their brains. You need their experience and their expertise. Bring them together at some level, at some point, so it's not just you and a navigator and one or two crew members, but it is everyone that you can get it, because participation commonly leads to buy-in and ownership. If a strategic plan is to be effective, it must have buy-in from all ministry areas, including your small groups, your education, your discipleship, missions, your music, your recreation, all the different components, all the different parts and ministries involved in your church. In order to have maximum buy-in, you want to involve the right people in the process, making them responsible for planning as well as execution. You'll win their commitment, and it will produce real working plans, realistic plans. If there's no ownership, the plan will probably never set sail. When the initial planning is complete, every action should have a person responsible and accountable for accomplishing it. When the plan is rolled out to the congregation as a whole, those responsible for action plans should not be surprised that their names are associated with a certain action step. You should have involved them in the planning process. There are several benefits to having the right people involved in the process. Remember what Jim Collins talked about in Good to Great, getting the right people on the bus, and I add to that the right people on the bus and the right groups on the bus. And so as you build your strategic planning teams, that you're going to involve the right people, and that means you have to evaluate them, and then you have to enlist them and encourage them and train them, equip them and educate them, and then you have to engage them in their part. You've got to know where you're going before you get there, not making this up as you go, flying by the seat of your pants, or in this case, sailing by the seat of your pants. You've got to know where the mile markers are, where the points on your journey are, that you change a little direction or go a different way or slow down or speed up, in some way adjusting your journey so that you safely reach your port of call, your destination. You fulfill your mission. You fulfill your vision. Many times the greatest value in strategic planning is the process itself and not the actual plans that you get from the process. If you're looking for a way to build camaraderie, teamwork, coordination, cooperation, collaboration, and organization, to build a team whose hearts are bound together, interwoven, the strategic planning process is one way to do that. Here's the next principle of an effective plan, and that is an effective strategic plan is simple. A ship's chart directs one ship to one destination, not multiple ships to multiple destinations. A ship does not need all the navigational possibilities to get to many destinations. It needs a clear course to get to a particular place, one place, a clear, simple, concise, God-directed plan. The planning process should be kept simple. Your teams can become paralyzed if you throw too much information at them, or there's too many stops or too many variables. In truth, you want good plans, come from the Holy Spirit. They're verified by analysis and the trends, and you document what the church leaders already know, but you want to keep it simple. KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. And so when you go through this, if you have more than 3 to 5 major priorities or initiatives per year for a medium to small congregation, you probably have too many. Now, if you have a larger church and you're capable of handling that and carrying it, but don't get yourself too divided in where you're headed and how you're going to get there. Make the plan simple so that people can easily grasp it and buy in and take ownership of it, so they can easily understand what they're doing. Do not get off mission. Do not get off direction. Do not get off heading toward your destination. Keep the process simple and keep the plan simple. Here's the fifth principle of effective strategic planning. It is made for action. Any effective strategic plan used in a church should lead to immediate action. Once you, as the leader, the captain, and maybe your consultant, a navigator, and your crew, your leadership team, and the players who are involved in this have made preparations, it's time for you to set sail. You don't prepare the ship to go to a destination and then just sit in the port or sail in a circle. You don't prepare the plan just to stay in port. Plans are made for action. After reviewing the strategic plans of some churches, I have really thought, they've got a nice dream, but how are they going to make these dreams become a reality? And so if you do this top down, you may come up with how everybody is supposed to carry out their responsibilities and their duties to make individual ministries in your church work, and you haven't gone to the people who are actually doing the work and asked them, and you'll find out that what you planned has to be tweaked by them or shelved by them, put aside, because then they'll have to come up with their own action steps. But plans that are effective are made for action. They're made to be carried out. When the initial phase of planning is complete and you are ready to carry out your mission in order to reach your destination, your vision, all guided by your core values, there should be no question in your mind what the initial steps ought to be. Everyone should know their assignments, who the players are on their individual team, what their roles are, what their resources are, where, when, how, what, and why they're going to carry out their duties, what their goals are, their target goals, what their objective is, that your strategic plan is simple but complete, and it's made where they can follow it in order to fulfill their individual part in the plan. It shouldn't be just empty actions, by the way. The right actions need to be taken. I had a friend who played minor league baseball, and I coached his son, and he helped me with it. He said, I taught for years that practice makes perfect, but really it's perfect practice that makes perfect. You have to practice until you have it perfect so that you can perform with perfection in the game. So you want to have action where they can practice and work at it. But understand that one of the key principles for an effective strategic plan is that they are designed to be used. The right actions leading to the right performance so that you can reach the goals. You're partnering with God, who is a God of excellence, so our planning should be excellent. Remember, the strategic planning is a process. Once you begin to get the results the plan is designed to achieve, you can always add other priorities. The purpose of planning is to focus your leadership, your team of people, and your resources, to focus on what's important. You want to unite your people and disciple them, build them through this process. You want to rally all your people and your resources around a single vision and focus the call for a simple plan to carry out certain action steps so that you can accomplish God's will for your ministry. Now, in closing here, let me tell you that an effective plan is also in this a process. And in this journey, in this process, you are going to see spiritual growth happen. You're going to win people to Christ. You're going to win them to the vision of your church and to the ministry of your church. And so as we talk about this, there are three essential things that you need to know as you go through the strategic planning process. Number one, you need to clearly understand where you are. Number two, you need to understand where you want to go. You need to know what port you're now in and what port of call you want to go to. And then thirdly, you need to clearly understand as the leader how you want to get there, at least as you work through it with your leadership team and your strategic planning team, that you're going to come to a certain conclusion about how you're going to get to where God is calling you. So my shepherding philosophy for decades has been that I take people wherever I find them along their journey in their life, lost, unchurched, lost, churched, de-churched, needing to be re-churched, know the Lord but unchurched, regardless of where I find them and whatever condition they're in. My responsibility as a spiritual leader is to take them from wherever I find them to wherever God wants them to be. And that journey, you need to understand where you are, your ministry audit, an assessment of exactly where are you on God's map for his journey with you or yours with him, where he wants you to go, and then how he wants you to get there. Failing to nail down the essentials and to understand the principles of effective planning will hinder the very initial efforts you make toward leading your church through your strategic plan. I trust the Lord will give you his grace and mercy and strength and wisdom to lead your church through the strategic planning process that will be a part of your fulfilling your calling, your mission, so that you can reach God's preferred future, his vision for your ministry. Well, I'm Marshall Shannon, Ministry Design Coach with Ministry Design Training and Ministry Design Concepts. You can reach me at this email address or either one of these phone numbers. We'll be happy to help you with your ministry.